The text message from my bank hit me like a slap across the face. Your account balance is zero zeros. I blinked, refreshed the screen, and checked again. Nothing. My hands trembling, I called the bank, only to have my worst fears confirmed. Jonathan had somehow gained access and drained everything. My name is Jasmine, and 3 months ago, I thought divorcing my wealthy husband would be the end of my nightmare. I was wrong. It was just the beginning. He can't do this! I practically shouted into my phone at Nina, pacing my empty living room. Everything I had was in that account. My savings, my business funds, everything. That bastard! Nina's voice crackled through the speaker. Have you called your lawyer? They're looking into it, I spat, running my fingers through my hair. Meanwhile, I can't even buy groceries. God, I should have known he'd do something like this. Jonathan never could handle losing control. The mansion felt suffocating now. I'd won it in the divorce, along with a few other assets that probably made Jonathan's blood boil. But at what cost? Every room held memories I wanted to forget. Dinner parties where he'd belittled me in front of his business associates. Arguments that ended with him storming off to his study. Nights spent crying myself to sleep. The study. Something clicked in my mind. Nina, I'll call you back. I practically ran up the stairs, my heart pounding. Jonathan's private study had always been off-limits during our marriage. His sanctuary, he'd called it. But now it was mine. The room still smelled like his expensive cologne, making my stomach turn. I started with the obvious places: desk drawers, filing cabinets, the safe behind his pretentious oil painting. Nothing unusual, just business contracts and tax documents. Then I noticed it. The floorboard under his desk was slightly raised, almost imperceptible, unless you were looking for it. My hands shook as I pried it up, revealing a manila envelope. What were you hiding, Jonathan? I whispered, pulling out the contents. My eyes widened as I scanned the documents. Bank statements, offshore accounts, emails discussing alternative revenue streams and creative accounting. Names I recognized from Jonathan's business circle, amounts that made my head spin, and instructions for moving money that screamed money laundering. My phone buzzed. A text from Jonathan himself. Enjoying being broke, sweetheart? Should have taken the settlement offer when you had the chance. I could almost hear his smug laughter. Picture that arrogant smirk he always wore when he thought he'd won. But for the first time in months, I smiled. Nina, I said when she picked up my call, I need you to come over, now, and bring your camera. We need to document everything. What did you find? She asked, clearly picking up on the change in my voice. Let's just say Jonathan's not as clever as he thinks he is. I carefully laid out the documents on his desk, my hands steady now. He wanted to play dirty? Fine. Game on. Nina arrived 20 minutes later, slightly breathless. Holy shit, she whispered, looking at the spread of documents. Is this what I think it is? She had evidence, I said, watching her photograph each page. Proof of every shady deal, every illegal transaction. He was so careful to hide it from everyone. His business partners, his lawyers, even his precious mother Julia. But he never thought I'd find it. What are you going to do? I picked up one particular document, an email chain discussing the disposal of evidence related to a suspicious investment. I'm going to make a call. There's this lawyer, Talia Fleming. She's known for taking down corrupt businessmen like Jonathan. I think it's time she and I had a chat. Nina grabbed my arm. Jasmine, are you sure? This is big. Once you start this. He took everything from me, Nina. My dignity, my security, my freedom. I gestured around the study. He thought this house was my prison, but he just handed me the key to his destruction. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Jonathan. Missing me yet, darling? Don't worry. You'll learn to live without luxury. Maybe get a job as a waitress? I took a deep breath, remembering all the times he'd made me feel small, worthless, dependent. Not anymore. I had proof of his crimes in my hands, and for the first time since our divorce, I felt powerful. Nina, I said, gathering the documents carefully. Let's get these somewhere safe. Tomorrow morning, I'm paying Talia Fleming a visit. It's time Jonathan learned what it feels like to lose everything. As we left the study, I took one last look at the room where Jonathan had plotted his empire's growth. He never suspected that this same room would become the source of its destruction. Sometimes karma needs a little push, and I was ready to shove. Talia Fleming's office screamed power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown, and the walls were decorated with newspaper clippings of her victories. Corrupt CEO faces justice, corporate giant falls, and similar headlines stared down at me as I sat across from her desk. "So," Talia said, examining the documents I'd brought with sharp eyes, "you found these in a hidden compartment in your ex-husband's study?" Her red-painted nails tapped against her desk rhythmically. "Yes. After he froze my accounts, I started looking for anything I could use against him." I leaned forward. "Those emails about the creative accounting, that's money laundering, isn't it?" Talia's lips curved into a predatory smile. "Oh, it's much more than that. Your ex-husband has been very busy." She spread out several papers. "These transactions here? Classic shell company operations. And this chain of emails discusses insider trading so blatant it would make Wall Street blush." My heart raced. "Can we use it?" "Use it?" Talia laughed. "Honey, we can destroy him with this. But I need to know, are you ready for what comes next? Jonathan won't go down quietly. He'll fight dirty." "He already is fighting dirty," I replied, my voice steady. "He's trying to starve me out, humiliate me. Yesterday, he sent his mother Julia to check on me." "What happened?" "She offered me money to go away quietly. Said Jonathan would restore my accounts if I signed an agreement never to contest anything in the divorce settlement again." Talia's eyes narrowed. "And?" "I told her to get out of my house." I smiled, remembering Julia's shocked face. "That's when I knew I had to come to you." The intercom buzzed, and Talia's assistant's voice came through. "Ms. Fleming, there's a call from Jonathan Ortiz's office." "Already?" Talia raised an eyebrow. "He works fast. Put him through." She hit the speaker button. "Talia!" Jonathan's smooth voice filled the room. "I hear my ex-wife paid you a visit." "News travels fast," Talia replied coolly. "Let me save us all some time. Whatever Jasmine told you, whatever she thinks she has, it's nothing. She's just a bitter ex-wife trying to cause trouble." I opened my mouth to speak, but Talia held up her hand. "Is that so?" she asked. "Then you won't mind explaining the wire transfers to accounts in the Cayman Islands? Or perhaps the emails about disposing of evidence?" Silence, then. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you do. In fact, I'm looking at the proof right now. Would you like me to read some highlights?" "You're making a mistake." Jonathan's voice turned cold. "You don't want me as an enemy." "No, Jonathan." Talia's voice was steel. "You don't want me as an enemy. Expect to hear from my office soon." She ended the call. My phone immediately buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "You have no idea what you've just started." Talia watched me read it. "Last chance to back out. Once we file these documents, there's no going back." I thought about all the years I'd spent diminishing myself to fit into Jonathan's world, all the times I'd swallowed my pride when he'd treated me like a trophy rather than a partner. "Do it. File everything." "Good." Talia stood up. "I'll have my team start working on this immediately. But Jasmine?" Her expression softened slightly. "Be careful. Men like Jonathan are most dangerous when cornered." As if on cue, my phone rang. It was my brother Derek. "Jazz," he sounded worried. "Jonathan just called me. He's offering me a job at his company. Said he wants to keep things friendly in the family." "What's going on?" "Don't take it," I said quickly. "He's trying to manipulate you. Listen, can you come over tonight? There's a lot I need to tell you." After leaving Talia's office, I drove home, my mind racing. The game had begun, and Jonathan's call proved he was already scrambling. But something else was bothering me. How had he known I was meeting with Talia so quickly? The answer was waiting in my driveway. Nina stood there, looking devastated. "I'm so sorry." she said as I got out of my car. Julia came to my house this morning. She had photos of my brother's business dealings with Jonathan. Said if I didn't tell her where you were going today, she'd make sure my brother lost everything. I hugged her tightly. It's okay, let them play their games. We knew this wouldn't be easy. What's our next move? I looked at my phone, where another text from Jonathan waited. You should ask your mother about the last time someone tried to expose me. My mother? I hadn't spoken to her in years. What did she have to do with any of this? Our next move, I told Nina, is to find out exactly what my mother knows about Jonathan. Because something tells me this goes deeper than we thought. The news broke like a thunderstorm. Corporate scandal rocks industry. CEO Jonathan Ortiz under investigation, screamed the headlines. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications as the story spread across social media. Look at this, Derek said, scrolling through his phone on my couch. The stock is in free fall. Jonathan's board of directors called an emergency meeting. I was about to respond when my doorbell rang. Through the security camera, I saw a woman I didn't recognize holding a press badge. Ms. Campbell? She called out. Rebecca Mills from the Financial Times. We'd like your comment on the allegations against your ex-husband. Don't answer it, Derek advised, peeking through the curtains. There are 3 more reporters on the lawn. My phone rang. Talia. Turn on Channel 7, she said without preamble. Jonathan's doing damage control. There he was on my TV screen, standing at a podium outside his corporate headquarters. He looked immaculate as always in his tailored suit, but I could see the strain around his eyes. These allegations are completely false, he was saying, his voice steady. This is nothing more than a vindictive attack by my ex-wife, who is bitter about our divorce. I have always conducted my business with the utmost integrity. Integrity? Derek snorted. Is that what he calls hiding money in offshore accounts? The TV suddenly switched to breaking news. Anonymous source leaks emails detailing Ortiz Corp financial misconduct. My phone exploded with messages. The first was from Jonathan. You're going to regret this. The second was from Julia. You've just destroyed my son's life. I hope you're prepared for the consequences. But it was the third message that made my blood run cold. From an unknown number. I saw the news. We need to talk. Mom. Derek, I said, showing him the message. Did you tell her about any of this? He shook his head. Haven't spoken to her in months. But Jess, maybe you should hear what she has to say. After 15 years of silence? Now she wants to talk? The doorbell rang again. This time it was Nina, looking frazzled. You need to see this, she said, rushing in. She pulled up a social media post on her phone. Someone had leaked photos of Jonathan leaving a hotel with his lawyer last night. The comments are wild, Nina said. People are connecting dots between Jonathan's company and other corporations. It's spreading faster than they can contain it. My phone rang again. Talia. We have a problem, she said. Jonathan's lawyers are filing a countersuit. They're claiming you obtained those documents illegally. But it was my house, I protested. The study was legally mine after the divorce. I know, but they're trying to muddy the waters. Listen, there's something else. They're bringing up your mother in their filing. Something about a previous settlement 15 years ago. What do you know about this? Nothing, I said. But a memory stirred. Mom crying late at night, Dad yelling about betrayal, and then suddenly, we never saw Mom again. I need to make a call. I stepped into the kitchen for privacy and dialed the unknown number. She answered on the first ring. Jasmine, my mother's voice was exactly as I remembered it. I was wondering when you'd call. What do you know about Jonathan? She sighed. It's not a conversation for the phone. Meet me at the River Cafe in an hour. Come alone. Why should I trust you? Because, she paused. 15 years ago, I made the mistake of taking Jonathan's money to stay quiet. I won't let him do the same thing to my daughter. After I hung up, Derek was watching me with concern. You're not really going alone, are you? Of course not. I texted Talia the details. Have someone watching the cafe. If anything seems off. I'm coming too, Derek insisted. I'll sit at the bar. Mom won't even notice me. My phone buzzed with another text from Jonathan. Ask your mother about October 15th, 2008. Ask her what she did with the money. October 15th, Derek said, reading over my shoulder. Isn't that? The day Mom left, I finished. And apparently, Jonathan knows why. Nina grabbed her keys. I'll drive. You're shaking too much. As we headed to the cafe, I watched another news alert pop up. Ortiz Corp executives begin mass resignation. The empire was crumbling, but I couldn't celebrate yet. Whatever my mother knew about Jonathan, whatever happened 15 years ago, I had a feeling it was about to change everything. Ready? Nina asked as we pulled up to the cafe. I took a deep breath, watching a familiar figure through the window. My mother, sitting alone, stirring her coffee just like she used to at our breakfast table 15 years ago. No, I said, but let's do this anyway. The River Cafe was quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. My mother, Valeria, looked older than I remembered, but her posture was still perfect, her hands steady as she lifted her coffee cup. 15 years melted away as I slid into the seat across from her. You look just like your father, she said softly. Let's not do this, I cut her off. Tell me about Jonathan. October 15th, 2008. She set down her cup. Your father's company was in trouble. Jonathan, he wasn't CEO then, just a rising star in corporate finance, offered to help. But there was a catch. What kind of catch? I was on the board of directors. I discovered some irregularities in the books. The same kind of thing you found now. She smiled bitterly. Jonathan approached me privately, offered me $2 million to resign quietly and disappear. Said if I didn't, he'd make sure your father went to prison instead. My coffee turned sour in my mouth. So you took the money and abandoned us? I took the money to protect your father, she snapped. And you? Do you know what happens to families when these scandals break? Look at what Jonathan's doing to you now. That's different. I have proof. So did I. She pulled out an envelope from her purse. These are copies of everything I had back then. Bank statements, board meeting minutes, emails. Sound familiar? My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The documents inside were like ghosts of the ones I'd found in Jonathan's study. Different dates, different amounts, but the same schemes. Why are you showing me this now? Because history is repeating itself. Jonathan's been doing this for years, Jasmine. He finds struggling companies, infiltrates them, sets up his laundering operations. When someone gets too close, he either buys them off or destroys them. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek at the bar. Julia just walked in. I looked up to see Jonathan's mother making her way toward our table, her designer heels clicking on the floor. Well, Julia said, stopping at our table. This is a touching reunion. We're done here. I started to stand, but Julia put a hand on my shoulder. Sit down, dear. The three of us need to talk. There's nothing to discuss, my mother said, her voice ice. No? Julia smiled. Not even about what really happened to those $2 million? The money that mysteriously ended up in your daughter's college fund? I stared at my mother. What? I couldn't just leave you with nothing, she whispered. Your father. He never knew. I made it look like a scholarship. How sweet, Julia said. And now here you are, both trying to destroy my son. Again, your son, my mother stood up, is a criminal who preys on vulnerable companies and people. He was doing it 15 years ago, and he's doing it now. Careful, Julia's voice hardened. Remember what happened last time you made accusations without proof. You mean this proof? Talia's voice cut through the tension. She appeared beside our table, holding up her phone. I've been recording this entire conversation. Fascinating stuff about historical patterns of fraud, wouldn't you say? Julia's face went pale. You can't. Oh, but I can. And I did. Talia smiled. Your son's not the only one who knows how to set a trap. My phone buzzed again, this time with a news alert. Breaking, Former board member comes forward with historical evidence of Ortiz Corp fraud. You planned this, Julia accused, looking between my mother and me. No, I said, standing up. But maybe it's time someone stopped running from your son's threats. Jasmine! My mother touched my arm. There's more you need to know. About your father's company, about why I really left. Another buzz from my phone, Jonathan calling. Don't answer it, Talia advised. But I had to know. What do you want? Turn on the news, he said, his voice shaking with rage. Now! The cafe's TV was already showing it. Footage of police cars outside Jonathan's office building. The caption read, FBI raids Ortiz Corp headquarters. This isn't over, Jonathan hissed before hanging up. He's right, my mother said quietly. This is just the beginning. Jonathan won't stop until he's destroyed everyone who's turned against him. Then maybe it's time we stopped him, together. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in 15 years. Tell me everything, no more secrets, she nodded, tears in her eyes. It started long before October 15th. Your father's company wasn't Jonathan's first target, and I wasn't his first victim. Julia had gone very still. Don't, she whispered. But my mother's eyes were steel. Your son learned his tricks from somewhere, Julia. Should we tell Jasmine who taught him? The cafe seemed to hold its breath as my mother opened her purse and pulled out another envelope. This, she said, is what really happened 20 years ago, when Julia was still CEO of her own company. Your mother taught Jonathan everything he knows about corporate fraud, my mother explained, spreading out yellowed documents across the cafe table. Before Ortiz Corp, there was Julia's company, Pinnacle Industries. That's enough, Julia snapped, reaching for the papers, but Talia smoothly intercepted her hand. 20 years ago, my mother continued, Julia ran one of the largest investment firms in the city. I was a junior accountant there. That's where I first noticed the pattern. Shell companies, missing funds, forged documents. You're lying, Julia's voice shook. Am I? What about Project Aurora, the offshore accounts, the mysterious fire that destroyed the evidence room? My mother pulled out a newspaper clipping. 3 people died in that fire, Julia. I felt sick. What happened? The SEC was closing in. Julia needed a way out, so she did what any loving mother would do. She set up her 20-year-old son as the fall guy. I protected him, Julia exploded. They were going to arrest someone. Better a young, naive executive who'd get sympathy from the jury than... She stopped, realizing what she'd admitted. Talia's phone was still recording. But Jonathan figured it out, my mother said softly. Didn't he? He learned your methods, studied your books. Then he turned them against you, took control of the company piece by piece until you were nothing but a figurehead. My phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Police just pulled up outside. Like mother, like son, Talia commented, watching Julia's face, both willing to sacrifice anyone to save themselves. Julia's composure cracked. You don't understand. I taught him because I had to. The business world, it's brutal. I needed him to be stronger than I was. Stronger? I laughed bitterly. You created a monster, and now you're helping him destroy people's lives, just like you destroyed mine. Your life? Julia scoffed. What about my son's life? The empire we built? Built on fraud and death, my mother interjected. She turned to me. When I found out about Jonathan's connection to Pinnacle, I tried to warn your father. That's when Jonathan offered me the money. He said if I didn't take it, what happened at Pinnacle would happen at your father's company too. 2 police officers entered the cafe, heading straight for our table. Julia Ortiz? One asked. We need you to come with us. The FBI has some questions about the Pinnacle Industries fire. As they led Julia away, she turned to me. He'll never forgive you for this, either of you. My phone rang. Jonathan again. This time, Talia answered it on speaker. It's over, Jonathan, she said. We have everything. Pinnacle, the fire, your mother's confession. The FBI is moving on all fronts. You think you've won? His voice was deadly calm. Ask your mother what happened to the other whistleblowers, Jasmine. Ask her about David Torres, Sarah Mitchell, Robert. All dead, my mother cut in. Accidents, suicides, disappearances. That's why I ran. That's why I stayed away, to keep you safe. Smart woman, Jonathan sneered. Pity her daughter isn't as wise. Check your email, darling. My phone dinged. The email contained a single video file. Security footage from my father's old office, dated October 15th, 2008. In it, my mother handed something to Jonathan, then accepted an envelope. The smoking gun, Jonathan said. Proof your mother didn't just take a bribe. She actively helped me set up the fraud at your father's company. How do you think I got all those account numbers? All those signatures? I looked at my mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Is it true? I whispered. I had no choice, she said. He had proof I helped Julia at Pinnacle. He would have exposed everything. One big happy family of fraudsters, Jonathan laughed. Face it, Jasmine. You're the only clean one in this mess. Walk away now, or I release this to the press. Your mother goes to prison, your father's reputation is destroyed, and what? I cut in. You think I care about protecting anyone's reputation anymore? Release it. Release all of it. Let everyone see exactly what kind of people you all are. Silence on the line. You'd sacrifice your own mother? He asked finally. She sacrificed me first. I looked at my mother's stricken face. The difference is, I'm not running away. I'm standing here, watching your whole house of cards fall. Then burn with it, he snarled and hung up. Talia was already on her phone. Get me the FBI agent in charge. We need protection details now. Jonathan's just made threats against my client. My mother reached for my hand. Jasmine, please, let me explain. I pulled away. Save it for your testimony. You're going to tell the FBI everything, every detail, every scheme, every death. No more running. And then? She asked quietly. And then? I looked at the cafe's TV, still showing the raid at Jonathan's office. Then we finish what we started. Together or not, Jonathan's going down, and this time, no one's taking a payoff to stay quiet. The safe house felt like a prison, even if it was a luxury apartment. 3 days had passed since the FBI moved us here, and Jonathan's threats were proving very real. Another one of your father's old employees was attacked last night, Talia announced, walking in with a stack of papers. Someone broke into his house, left photos of his children on his kitchen table. He's agreed to testify now, says he'd rather face Jonathan in court than live in fear. How many does that make? I asked, looking up from my laptop where I'd been reviewing old company records. 7 witnesses in 4 days, Derek answered, from his spot by the window. He'd refused to leave my side since everything went down. Jonathan's getting desperate. My mother sat in the corner, going through more old documents. She'd been cooperating fully with the FBI, though things between us remained tense. I found something, she said suddenly, about the Pinnacle fire. There was an insurance payout, $50 million, but according to these records, only $30 million was reported. Talia leaned over her shoulder. Where did the other $20 million go? That's the interesting part. My mother pulled up a bank statement. It was divided into 3 accounts, one for Julia, one for Jonathan, and one for... A knock at the door cut her off. The FBI agent assigned to us, Agent Sarah, entered with a grim expression. We have a situation, she said. Jonathan's been spotted boarding a private jet. You let him leave the country? I stood up, furious. No, Sarah smiled. We let him think he was leaving the country. The pilot works for us. He's currently landing at a private airstrip where we have a team waiting. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check the news. The TV was already showing it. Breaking. Ortiz Corp CEO attempts escape. Private jet diverted. Then another text. Wrong jet. The color drained from Agent Sarah's face as she received a call. What do you mean he's not on board? It was a decoy, my mother said quietly. That's what I was trying to tell you. The third account from the Pinnacle fire? It belonged to a private aviation company. Jonathan's owned it for 20 years. My phone rang. Nina. "Turn on Channel 7, she said without greeting. "Now." The headline made my heart stop. Multiple explosions reported at former Pinnacle Industries building. "The evidence," Talia breathed. "All the old records were stored there." "Not all of them." My mother pulled out a USB drive. "I made copies years ago, kept them in a safety deposit box under a different name. I knew this day would come eventually." Agent Sarah was already mobilizing teams, barking orders into her phone. "Lock down all private airfields. Check security footage from the past 48 hours. He had to have help." Another text. "Getting warmer. Ask Julia about the boat." "The boat?" I turned to my mother. "What boat?" Her face went pale. "Julia's yacht. She used to joke it was her escape plan. It's fully stocked, has satellite communications, could reach international waters in—" "How long?" Talia demanded. 3 hours. Agent Sarah was already on it. "Coast Guard's been notified. Where's the marina?" "Wait," I said, something clicking. "This is too easy. Jonathan wants us to chase the boat." "While he does what?" Derek asked. My phone buzzed again. "Smart girl, tick-tock." Then it hit me. "The servers," I gasped. "The backup servers at my father's old company. They would still have records of all the transactions from 2008. "Those servers were decommissioned years ago," my mother said. "But not destroyed," I countered. "They're in storage at the data center across town. Jonathan knows this because he's the one who ordered them preserved, probably keeping them as insurance against everyone involved." Talia was already dialing. "This is Fleming. We need a team at the East Side Data Center immediately. Authorization code." An explosion rocked the building. Fire alarms blared. "He's here," my mother whispered. "This was his plan all along. Get everyone looking elsewhere while he came for us directly." Agent Sarah drew her weapon. "Everyone to the panic room, now!" As we rushed down the hallway, my phone buzzed one final time. "Found you." The lights went out. "Keep moving," Agent Sarah ordered in the darkness. "The panic room has backup power." A figure stepped out of the stairwell ahead of us. "Hello, darling." Jonathan's voice came through the darkness. "Miss me?" "It's over," I called out. "The FBI has everything." "Not quite everything." He stepped into the dim emergency lighting. "Your mother's copies, the server backups, and now, you, the last loose ends." "Drop your weapon!" Agent Sarah shouted. Jonathan laughed. "You really think I came alone?" More figures emerged from the shadows. We were surrounded. "Now then," Jonathan said pleasantly, "let's discuss how this is really going to end. You know what your problem is, Jonathan?" I stepped forward, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "You always underestimate people, just like you underestimated me during our marriage." He smiled that condescending smile I'd grown to hate. "And you're still talking too much, darling. Now hand over the USB drive, and maybe I'll let Agent Sarah here live." "You mean this USB drive?" I held it up. "The one with all your mother's dirty secrets?" "Last chance, Jasmine. Funny thing about secrets, Jonathan. They're only powerful when they're actually secret." I tossed him the drive. "Check your phone." His smile faltered as he pulled out his phone. His face went ash white. "What did you do?" he whispered. "Talia?" I called out. "How many news outlets did we send the files to?" "All of them." Talia's voice came through my phone on speaker. "Every major network, newspaper, and online publication just received 20 years' worth of evidence. It's already trending on social media." One of Jonathan's men shifted nervously. "Boss, my wife just sent me a link. It's everywhere." "That's impossible," Jonathan snarled. "The servers." "We're a decoy," my mother cut in. "Just like your private jet. Just like Julia's yacht. We learned from the best, didn't we? You really think I won't shoot you all right now?" Jonathan's hand shook as he raised his gun. "With what bullets?" Agent Sarah asked calmly. Jonathan pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. Did you really think the FBI would leave loaded weapons in a safe house? Sarah stepped forward. Drop it. Your men aren't actually your men, Jonathan, I explained as his backup suddenly trained their weapons on him. They're FBI. Have been since you hired them last week. Turns out loyalty can be bought. Isn't that what you always said? The lights came back on. More agents poured into the hallway. No. Jonathan backed away. No, I had everything planned. The explosions, the diversions, were exactly what we wanted you to do. Talia emerged from the stairwell behind him. Every move you made was tracked, documented, and added to the evidence pile. By the way, your mother just finished her confession. She's quite thorough when offered immunity. Jonathan lunged for me, but Derek was faster, tackling him to the ground. That's for my sister, he growled, as agents pulled Jonathan up and cuffed him. You've lost everything, I told Jonathan as they led him away. Your company, your freedom, your reputation. How does it feel? He spat at my feet. You think this is over? I still have accounts you'll never find. Contacts who owe me favors. This isn't over until... Until what? A new voice joined us. Julia stepped into the hallway, flanked by more agents. Until you run to your hidden accounts? The ones I helped the FBI freeze this morning? Or maybe your contacts? The ones who've been turning themselves in all day to make deals? Mother? Jonathan's voice cracked. What have you done? What I should have done 20 years ago. Stopped you. She wouldn't look at him. I created this monster. Now I'm helping end it. Take him, Agent Sarah ordered. As they led Jonathan away, he called back one last time. You'll regret this, Jasmine. All of you. No, I said quietly. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. My phone buzzed with news alerts. Ortiz Corp CEO arrested in dramatic raid. 20 years of corporate fraud exposed. Multiple executives turn state's evidence. Stock market reacts to massive financial scandal. It's really over? Derek asked, putting an arm around my shoulders. Almost, Talia said. We still have to track down every account, every transaction. It could take years to unravel everything. My mother touched my arm hesitantly. Jasmine, I know I can never make up for... You're right, you can't. I cut her off. But helping bring him down, it's a start. Agent Sarah cleared her throat. Ms. Campbell, we'll need you to come down to the office. There's something else you should see. What is it? We found records of other companies, other families Jonathan targeted over the years. People who lost everything, just like you almost did. They're all being notified, but... She paused. They're asking to meet you. You've become something of a hero to them. I thought about all the people Jonathan had hurt, all the lives he destroyed. Set up the meeting. It's time these stories were heard. As we walked out of the safe house, past the evidence teams and news vans, I felt lighter than I had in years. Jonathan had tried to break me, to silence me, to make me disappear like all his other victims. Instead, he'd made me stronger. And now, standing in the morning sun, with the truth finally exposed, I knew this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning. The courtroom fell silent as Jonathan was led in for sentencing. He'd lost weight in custody, his designer suit replaced by prison orange, his confident smirk gone. He wouldn't look at me or at Julia, who sat rigidly in the front row. All rise, the bailiff called. The judge adjusted her glasses, reviewing the papers before her. Before I deliver the sentence, would any of the victims like to make a final statement? I stood. Jonathan finally looked at me, his eyes burning with hatred. Your Honor, I began, I'm not here to talk about what Jonathan took from me. Instead, I want to talk about what he gave me. Strength I didn't know I had, allies I never expected, and a purpose I never imagined. I gestured to the packed courtroom, filled with Jonathan's victims. Every person here has a story of loss, of betrayal, of having their lives shattered. But look at us now. We're not victims anymore. We're survivors. The judge nodded. Mr. Ortiz, please rise for sentencing. Jonathan stood, his chains rattling. For 37 counts of fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and attempted murder, I sentence you to 40 years in federal prison. Additionally, all assets connected to your criminal enterprise will be seized and used to establish a restitution fund for your victims. The gavel struck. Jonathan's empire, built on lies and betrayal, ended with a single wooden crack. As they led him out, he tried one last time. Jasmine! Goodbye, Jonathan, I cut him off. Enjoy prison. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as Talia addressed the media. Today's sentence marks the beginning of justice, not the end. The Victim Restitution Fund will help rebuild lives destroyed by corporate fraud. But more importantly, we're establishing the Truth in Business initiative. I stepped up to the microphone. This initiative will provide resources and protection for whistleblowers, ensuring that no one has to choose between doing what's right and protecting their family. My mother will serve as our first advisory board member, using her experience to help others come forward. My mother squeezed my hand, tears in her eyes. We weren't fully healed, but we were getting there. Nina rushed up with her phone. You need to see this. The stock market's responding to the sentence. 3 major corporations just announced independent audits. They're calling it the Ortiz effect. Companies scrambling to prove they're clean before their own whistleblowers come forward. Good, Talia smiled. Let them scramble. Julia approached us slowly. Jasmine, I owe you an apology. What I did to Jonathan, teaching him to be ruthless, I thought I was preparing him for success. Instead, I created a monster. You did, I agreed, but you also helped stop him. That counts for something. My phone buzzed. A message from Derek. Dad's watching the news coverage. He wants to talk. Another piece of my fractured family, slowly finding its way back. Ms. Campbell! A young woman pushed through the crowd. I'm Lisa. Your story inspired me to expose fraud at my company. Would you help me, like you helped the others? I looked at Talia, who nodded. That's exactly why we created the initiative. Come to our office tomorrow. As the crowd dispersed, I stood on the courthouse steps with my unlikely team, my once estranged mother, my brilliant lawyer, my loyal friend Nina, my supportive brother, and even Julia, all of us changed by the fight for justice. So, Nina nudged me. What now? Planning to relax, finally? I laughed. Actually, I've been thinking. All those offshore accounts we uncovered? That money shouldn't just go to restitution. We should use it to fund more investigations, support more whistleblowers, turn Jonathan's weapon against other corporate criminals, Talia mused. I like it. Me too, my mother added, and I know exactly where to start looking. I took one last look at the courthouse where Jonathan's reign of corruption had ended. He'd tried to destroy me, but instead, he'd given me something unexpected, a mission. You know what the best revenge is? I asked, watching more news vans arrive. It's not just exposing the truth. It's making sure the truth keeps coming out again and again until there's nowhere left for people like Jonathan to hide. To justice! Nina raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. To justice! We echoed, standing together in the morning sun, ready to take on whatever came next. Behind us, the courthouse doors opened again as another corporate criminal was led in for trial. I smiled. There was work to be done, and this time, I wasn't fighting alone.
I had been dodging the "when are you getting married" question at every turn, especially from my friends who had all settled down ages ago. Laura's birthday bash was no exception. The moment I walked into her place, I knew I was in for a night of good-natured ribbing and maybe a few setups. Laura greeted me at the door with a sly smile. Girl, you're the last free spirit among us. Not for long if I have my way, she teased, handing me a glass of wine. Inside, the room buzzed with our usual crowd, loud and lively. Laura had a knack for throwing great parties, and tonight was no different. I mingled, laughed, and dodged marriage questions like a pro. Then Laura pulled me aside, a mischievous glint in her eye. Listen, I've got someone I want you to meet. Tom, he's a friend of Mike's. Trust me, okay? She didn't wait for my answer, just dragged me across the room to where a guy was standing by the window, looking out. Tom turned as we approached. He was sharply dressed, which made him stand out even more. "Tom, this is my friend Chloe I was telling you about," Laura said with a wink. "Hey, Chloe," Tom said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, confident. "Heard a lot about you." "All good things, I promise." "Thanks," I said, trying to keep it cool even though I was already curious about him. "Laura hasn't told me anything about you, so you've got the upper hand." Tom laughed. "Fair enough. I work in finance, live downtown, and according to Mike, I make the best ribs east of the Mississippi." "Ribs, huh? That's quite a claim," I teased back. We hit it off instantly. The conversation flowed easily, from work to hobbies to our shared love for bad horror movies. Tom was easy to talk to, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for an escape route at one of these parties. As the night wore on, we found ourselves sitting on the balcony, a bit removed from the chaos inside. "So, why is a catch like you still single?" Tom asked after a lull in our conversation, a playful tone in his voice. I shrugged. "Just haven't met someone who can handle my kind of crazy yet," I said, giving him a challenging look. We talked more about our jobs, and I explained the campaigns I'd worked on, which seemed to genuinely interest him. It was refreshing to talk to someone who wasn't just trying to nod along, but actually understood the nuances of creative work. As the party started winding down, Laura found us again. "I'm not saying I told you so, but..." She trailed off, giving us a knowing look. Tom and I exchanged numbers, and as I left, he called after me. "Hey, don't be a stranger, okay? Let's catch a movie sometime. Maybe one of those terrible horror films?" "Sounds like a plan," I called back, grinning. Driving home, I couldn't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, Laura's matchmaking hadn't been such a bad thing after all. The year flew by faster than I thought possible, and before I knew it, it was my wedding day. I woke up feeling like I was in some kind of surreal bubble. Getting married wasn't something I'd put much thought into until I met Tom, and suddenly here I was, about to walk down the aisle. As my bridesmaids hustled around the room, fixing their makeup and adjusting their dresses, I stood in front of the mirror in my simple yet elegant wedding dress. Laura barged in, holding 2 cups of coffee, her hair half done. "Drink up, you're gonna need it," she said, thrusting a cup into my hand. "You look a bit pale, Chloe. Nervous?" "A bit," I admitted, taking a long sip. "Feels like I'm stepping into someone else's life, you know?" Laura chuckled. "That's normal. Just wait till you see Tom at the altar. You'll know it's your life, all right." The ceremony was a blur. I walked down the aisle, my dad beside me, cracking jokes to help me keep it together. "Remember, you can always run. I've got the car ready," he whispered as we approached the altar, earning him a sharp elbow jab from me. Tom looked stunned as I approached, his eyes never leaving mine. I couldn't help but smile, my nerves melting away under his gaze. We exchanged vows, his voice steady and sure, mine slightly trembling. "Do you, Tom, take this lovably stubborn woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" the officiant asked, a twinkle in his eye. "I do," Tom replied, loud and clear. "And do you, Chloe?" He turned to me. "Take this hopelessly disorganized man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" "I do," I managed, eliciting a few chuckles from the crowd. The reception was loud and lively. Our friends and family mingled, danced, and toasted to our future. Tom and I made our rounds, thanking everyone for coming. When we finally had a moment to ourselves, Tom pulled me close, whispering in my ear. "See? Not so bad, marrying me, right?" "Not yet," I teased. "Ask me again after the honeymoon." We both laughed, and he kissed me, the kind of kiss that made me forget we had an audience. As the night drew on, Tom's mom, Marilyn, came over, her eyes a bit teary. "I'm so happy for you too. Really, I am," she said, pulling me into a hug. It felt warm, genuine. "Thank you," I said, surprised by the sudden emotion. "I'm really glad to be part of your family." She smiled, then held my hands in hers. Take care of my boy, will you? He needs someone tough like you. As the night ended, we drove off to our honeymoon, the car decorated with cans and a just married sign fluttering in the breeze. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, as long as it was with Tom. After the whirlwind of the wedding, reality crashed back when Tom and I started talking about our living situation. He had set his sights on a swanky apartment in one of the city's most elite complexes. "Chloe, you should see this place," he gushed one evening as we browsed listings. "Top floor, killer view, and a balcony that's practically another room." I scrolled through the photos on the tablet, my eyebrows climbing higher with each swipe. "Tom, this place is gorgeous, but the rent's outrageous. Why don't we look at something a bit more reasonable?" He flicked away my concerns with a wave of his hand. "Come on, Chloe, we can afford it if we tighten up elsewhere. This is about setting a standard, living the life we deserve." Despite my reservations, we ended up in the luxury apartment with a rent that made me wince every time I wrote the check. We agreed I'd handle the rent, and Tom would take care of everything else. It seemed fair, if a bit skewed, but love made it easy to say yes. The first few weeks were like living in a magazine spread. I loved the space, but each rent payment was a reminder of our differing views on money. Tom's tastes leaned ever towards the extravagant. Adding to the tension, I noticed a change in his mom's behavior towards me. Where once she had been warm, now there was a coolness, a distance. She declined invitations to visit and didn't extend any of her own. It bothered me enough to bring it up to Tom one night as we cleaned up after dinner. "Tom, has your mom said anything about me lately?" I asked, watching his expression. He paused, a plate halfway to the dishwasher. "Nah, she's probably just being weird. Maternal jealousy or something." "Jealousy? Of what?" I pushed, not satisfied with the brush off. He shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "You know how it is. You're the new woman in my life. Give it time." But time didn't improve things. If anything, the distance grew, and soon, I felt it between Tom and me as well. His once casual elegance shifted into a constant showcase. He spent considerable time and money on his appearance, making remarks about how I dressed. "You know, Chloe, maybe you should see a stylist," he suggested one evening as we prepared for a night out with some of his work colleagues. I looked down at my outfit, simple and comfortable, then back up at him. "What's wrong with how I dress?" He sighed, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "It's just a bit rustic. You could spice it up. Impress a bit." I bristled. "I'm not here to impress anyone, Tom. I like my clothes. They're me. Urban, simple, and comfy." He shook his head, clearly frustrated. "It's about fitting in, Chloe. Looking the part." That night, as we mingled among Tom's stylish colleagues, the air between us was tense. I caught him several times looking at me, his gaze critical. It stung, and the night ended with us driving home in silence. The glossy image of our life that Tom curated for social media was miles apart from the reality that simmered between us. Every picture-perfect post was a stark contrast to the growing discontent I felt. As weeks turned into months, Tom's attitude shifted from mildly annoying to outright disrespectful. One evening, after returning from another high-society party where Tom had criticized my dress in front of a group of strangers, I couldn't hold back any longer. We were barely through the door when I spun around to face him. "Tom, we need to talk. This can't go on," I said, my voice firm yet weary from the evening's facade. He raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of amusement and challenge. "What's the problem now, Chloe? Your dress wasn't up to par again?" I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. "It's not just the dress. It's everything. You belittle me, in public and at home. You critique everything I do, from how I dress to the gifts I give you. Why?" Tom chuckled, a sound that grated on my nerves. "Chloe, you just don't get it, do you? We're not in your little quaint world anymore. We're playing in the big leagues now. You need to step up or step aside." Maybe you should just embrace being a housewife, like my mother did. The suggestion stung, the arrogance in his voice making my blood boil. A housewife? Really, Tom? And who's going to pay for this lavish lifestyle? You want me to stop working, but who will cover the rent for this palace you've chosen? He paused, momentarily caught off guard by my rebuttal. Well, I mean, we would figure it out. Figure it out? Just like you've figured out how to spend money on every luxury except the things that matter? You're more concerned with looking rich than actually being a partner in this marriage. I shot back. Tom's face hardened. You just don't understand the importance of appearances, Chloe. If you did, you'd spend more time at the spa, or maybe get some work done. Look around, everyone in our circle does it. I'm not everyone. And I'm not wasting money on spas or plastic surgery just to fit into your circle, I argued, my frustration reaching its peak. The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered like a thick fog. Over the next few weeks, Tom's obsession with maintaining a facade of wealth escalated. One Saturday, as we walked through the underground parking lot filled with high-end cars, Tom stopped to pose in front of a particularly flashy model. Here, take a picture, he commanded, handing me his phone. I took the phone, snapping the photo as he posed with a practiced smile. Going to caption this one about how hard work pays off? I asked dryly. Exactly, he replied, not catching the sarcasm. It's all about the image, Chloe. That's what gets you places. Tom was living for the approval of his followers, while I was just looking for sincerity in our marriage. The realization was sobering, and for the first time, I began to seriously question our future together. Lately, Tom's work hours stretched longer into the evenings, his presence at home becoming more the exception than the rule. I tried to shrug it off as dedication, ambition, something commendable. But the niggle of doubt was relentless, especially as Valentine's Day approached. A week before the holiday, while searching for an old photo album in our closet, my fingers brushed against a sleek, unfamiliar package tucked behind his hanging suits. Curiosity piqued, I pulled it out, a beautifully wrapped box from a high-end lingerie brand. My heart skipped. Perhaps Tom remembered how I always joked about spicing things up. When Valentine's Day dawned, I awoke with a flutter of excitement. But as we exchanged gifts over a hurried breakfast, the only thing Tom handed me was a fitness bracelet. Track your workouts better, he said with a casual peck on the cheek. No mention of the lingerie, no sign of indulgent silk or lace. By the time he left for work, the lingerie had disappeared from its hiding spot. My mind raced with possibilities, none pleasant. Was there someone else? Was that why he'd been so distant? By evening, my decision was made. I called a private detective, a number I got from a friend who had gone through something similar. I just need to know, I told him, my voice a mix of fear and resolve. 2 weeks later, I met the detective at a coffee shop downtown. His face was grim as he slid an envelope across the table. You were right to call, he said softly. I think this will answer your questions. Inside, I found evidence of dinners, late-night escapades, and receipts for gifts that certainly weren't for me. My heart sank, but I tucked the envelope away. Knowledge was power, and I needed a plan. That Friday, Tom staggered in late, reeking of booze. Guess what, Chloe, he slurred, barely able to stand straight. I got promoted. Big raise. We're celebrating tomorrow, my parents are coming over. He grinned, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. This was it. This was the moment to confront him. But not tonight. Tomorrow, with his parents as witnesses, would be perfect. I forced a smile. That's amazing, babe. We should definitely celebrate. As he stumbled off to bed, I sat in the living room, the weight of the envelope in my purse feeling like a ton. The evidence of his betrayal was palpable, the photos and receipts a mosaic of deceit. I rehearsed what I would say 1,000 times, each scenario different, each outcome uncertain. Morning light crept through the curtains too soon, and I rose, weary but resolved. Today would mark the end of one chapter and, hopefully, the beginning of something new, something real and honest. As I brewed coffee and set the table for the impending brunch, my hands were steady. The heartache had crystallized into a fierce resolve. Tom's parents did not take long to wait. His mother, Marilyn, had always given me the cold shoulder, but today her disdain was palpable. She eyed me over her teacup with a sneer as they arrived, bearing a gift for Tom. "Here, son," Marilyn said, handing over a beautifully wrapped package. "We thought you'd appreciate this." Tom unwrapped the gift, a sleek notebook embossed with his initials in gold. "Wow, this is classy. Thanks, Mom, Dad, you guys really know what I like," he beamed, clearly pleased. The atmosphere was strained as we sat down. Tom was oblivious to the undercurrents, chatting away about his new role at work. I could barely keep my composure, knowing what was coming. As the small talk ebbed, I saw my opening. I handed Tom a smaller, plainly wrapped package. "I got something for you too," I said, my voice steady. He weighed it in his hand, his smirk telling me he expected something substantial. "Hope it's not another one of your quirky gifts, Chloe," he laughed, tossing the package into the trash without opening it. "You do have terrible taste sometimes." Even Marilyn gasped, her usual frostiness towards me briefly turning to shock. "Thomas," she exclaimed. "That's no way to treat a gift from your wife." But I just smiled, the calm before the storm. "Why don't you take a look? I think you'll find it's quite fitting." Curiosity piqued, and perhaps hoping for an expensive gift, Tom retrieved the package from the bin and tore it open. The room fell silent as he unfolded the contents, photographs and receipts, the evidence of his infidelity laid bare. His father, George, peered over, his expression turning from confusion to anger. "Tom, what is this? Explain yourself." Tom's eyes darted around, seeking an ally, but finding none. It's not what it looks like," he began, but the receipts in his hand told a different story. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said quietly, the weight of months of deception lifting from my shoulders. "Tom has been cheating on me. These photos and receipts are proof of that." Marilyn, ever the matriarch, took charge, her voice icy. "We need to discuss this, now." Tom tried to defend himself, his words a jumble of excuses and blame. "Chloe never understood me. She didn't give me what I needed. It's not all my fault." Marilyn turned to me, her eyes softer than I had ever seen. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was happening. You don't deserve this. We will support whatever decision you make." The words were surreal, coming from her. "Thank you," I managed. "I think it's clear what needs to happen. We need to get a divorce." The room was heavy with disappointment and betrayal as Tom's parents digested the news. George spoke up, his voice heavy. "Son, you've not only dishonored your wife, but disgraced us as well." "I need some time," I said, my voice firm despite the chaos. "I'll be in the bedroom packing some things." Each item I placed in the suitcase felt like I was closing a chapter of my life, one filled with deceit and misplaced trust. When I was almost done, I stood at the threshold of the bedroom, suitcase in hand, and addressed everyone still gathered in the living room. "From today, Tom will be responsible for the rent of these apartments, not me," I declared, my voice echoing with a mixture of relief and resolve. Tom's face turned ashen, his earlier bravado evaporating in the face of reality. Marilyn looked at him with widened eyes. "You haven't been paying the rent, Thomas?" Before he could respond, I cut in. "I paid every single month, along with groceries and most other bills." Marilyn's gaze shifted between Tom and me, a realization dawning on her. "All this time, you lied about Chloe? We thought she was just spending your money." Her voice broke with the weight of her words. "I work at the advertising agency, and I have a good salary," I said, looking directly at Marilyn, who seemed genuinely taken aback. "It's Tom who has been reckless with money." At that, Marilyn's composure shattered. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing as she faced her son. "You ungrateful, spoiled fool," she yelled, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. Chloe is nothing but hardworking and kind, and you have failed her. George joined in, his tone harsh and unforgiving. Foolish boy. We didn't raise you to be this way. I should have been stricter with you when you were younger. The room was charged with emotion, the air thick with the bitter scent of disillusionment. While Tom's parents continued to berate Tom, I zipped up my suitcase and moved towards the door. The finality of my actions was liberating, yet heavy with sorrow. As I reached the doorway, George called out to me. Chloe, we're so sorry. We didn't know. We're going to make sure he learns from this. We might even need to reconsider his inheritance if this is how he conducts himself. I stepped out of the apartment, the door closing behind me with a soft click that seemed to resonate with finality. The cool corridor outside was a stark contrast to the heated atmosphere I'd left behind. Life after the divorce felt like stepping out from under a heavy shadow. I moved into a smaller, more modest apartment, the kind that felt cozy rather than cavernous. The walls didn't echo with past arguments or the hollow pretense of a life spun for social media. Here, I could breathe, decorate with simple tastes, and sleep soundly knowing I was living within my means. Since the split, I received monetary compensation from Tom and his mistress, a bitter reminder of their deceit that somehow felt like cold comfort. It was money I used judiciously, saving for a future that was all mine to shape. At work, I threw myself into new projects, earning a well-deserved promotion that came with a better office with a view of the city skyline that felt earned, not purchased. Despite everything, life settled into a rhythm that was quietly fulfilling. One quiet Saturday, as I was watering my plants, a new hobby that filled my home with greenery and life, my phone rang. It was Marilyn, Tom's mother. Our relationship had shifted surprisingly since the divorce, bound strangely by the shared betrayal of the man we both thought we knew. Chloe, dear, how are you? Her voice was warm, a stark contrast to the chill it used to carry. Hi, Marilyn. I'm good, thanks. Just enjoying a quiet weekend. How about you? There was a sigh, a rustle of papers. Marilyn was always more comfortable multitasking. It's been hard, but Tom's learned a lot of hard lessons lately. His mistress left him after she realized the lifestyle he promised was just a facade. I wasn't surprised. People show their true colors in tough times. I hope he finds his way back to something real. Yes, I hope so too, she agreed. Chloe, would you want to meet for coffee sometime? I'd love to keep in touch. We started meeting occasionally, finding common ground over cups of steaming coffee. Marilyn shared tales of her gardening club, and I talked about my latest projects at work. It was strangely healing, building something new from the ruins of something so broken. As I moved forward, my goals became clearer. I was saving up, hoping to buy my own place outright. The dream of a mortgage, a place truly mine, was close enough to make my heart race with excitement and fear all at once. On one such coffee date, as autumn painted the city in hues of orange and gold, Marilyn and I sat in a quaint cafe, its windows fogged slightly by the crisp air. You've done well for yourself, Chloe, Marilyn said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. You're really an inspiration. I'm just living my life, Marilyn. No need to impress anyone but myself now, I replied, taking a sip of my latte. That's exactly why you're inspiring. After everything, you're still you. Just happier, stronger. I thought about her words. Stronger, yes. Happier, definitely. The freedom to be myself, to build a life not defined by someone else's standards, was liberating. As we chatted about mundane things, the future felt less daunting. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, fueled by my own accomplishments and the simple pleasures of a life lived authentically. Hey there, I'm Ava, the artist that all the newspapers and critics have been talking about for the past 6 months. I live in a cozy apartment with canvases piled up like old newspapers in every corner. Today, I'm dragging my feet at another one of those art exhibitions where people with more money than sense pretend to understand art. But that's where the cash flows from, and I need that to keep doing what I love. I'm setting up my corner, hanging my pieces, when this guy walks in. Looks sharp, suit and all, and he's scanning the room like he's shopping for more than just art. I peg him for another rich snob at first. His eyes stop at my biggest piece, and there's a pause. Then he strolls over, all casual like he's walking into a friend's house uninvited. "That's quite a storm you've captured," he remarks, pointing at my painting of a tumultuous sea. "Yup, it's a mess all right," I reply, wiping my hands on my jeans. Not really in the mood to entertain. He chuckles, a deep sound that seems genuine. "I'm Ethan," he extends his hand, not a speck of pretension. That takes me off guard. "Ava," I shake his hand, firm and brief. Got tired of painting still lives and sunsets. Thought I'd throw some real life onto the canvas. "That's refreshing," he nods, glancing back at the painting. "It's raw, powerful." I'm about to thank him when he asks, "Got a minute to talk about your work? Maybe over coffee?" Coffee turns into sitting at this overpriced cafe across the street, Ethan sipping his fancy espresso while I stick to plain black coffee. He talks art like he knows it, really knows it. Turns out he owns a couple of galleries and isn't just some suit. "So, you make a living just throwing paint around?" he teases, eyebrow raised. "Beats wearing a tie," I shoot back, smiling despite myself. We talk about everything, art, music, crappy movies. He's easy to talk to, and I find myself opening up about my dream of making it big without selling out. He listens, really listens. "You're not like the usual artists I meet," he admits. "You're not all airs and graces. You're real, like your paintings." "Thanks, I guess," I say, still wary of compliments. Most guys don't look past the surface, you know? They see a girl who likes to paint, not someone trying to make something of herself. Well, I see someone talented. And it's not just about the art. It's about the artist. You've got something, Ava. Don't let anyone tell you different. The afternoon fades into evening, and I realize I've enjoyed myself. He walks me back to the exhibition, and before we part, he hands me his card. "Think about what I said, Ava. Maybe we can talk more, set up something for your work. No pressure, just think about it." "Yeah, maybe," I take the card, surprised at myself for even considering it. He gives me a small wave and heads back into the crowd, leaving me with a weird feeling in my gut. Like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just another pointless chat. Life's funny, ain't it? One minute you're slinging paint on a canvas in some dingy studio, and the next, you're being whisked off your feet by a guy who actually gets you. That's been my ride with Ethan. A year of surprises, and not the bad kind. We found ourselves at this tiny Italian place he likes, tucked away in a side street where you'd miss it if you blinked. The kind of spot where the owner knows your name and the food tastes like an old family recipe. Ethan's all smiles tonight, more than usual, and I can't help but feel a buzz in the air. He's fidgeting, which ain't like him at all. I'm about to call him out when he clears his throat, all serious like he's about to deliver the evening news. "Ava, I've been thinking," he starts, and I brace myself. Thinking can lead anywhere with Ethan. "Yeah? About what?" I keep it cool, sipping my wine like it's just another Tuesday. "About us. About this thing we've got going." He pauses, searching my face for clues. I ain't giving anything away just yet. I lean in, eyebrows up. "And?" He takes a deep breath, and then he's down on one knee, right there between the antipasto and the cannoli. I almost spit my wine out. "Ava, will you marry me?" He's holding up this ring, simple but perfect, and for a hot second, I'm speechless. I blink, making sure I'm not 3 glasses deep into a wine dream. "Ethan, are you for real right now?" As real as it gets. He's grinning, and damn, he looks hopeful. "Hell, yes," I laugh, more out of shock than anything. "Yeah, Ethan, I'll marry you." The whole restaurant's watching now, clapping, and the owner's bringing over another bottle of wine on the house. Ethan slides the ring on my finger, and it fits like it's always been there. We're laughing and kissing, and for once, I'm not thinking about tomorrow or the next day. Just here, now. He's all lit up, eyes shining. I wasn't sure what you'd say. Really? Come on, when have I ever managed to say no to you? I tease, but I'm riding the high, too. It's just, you're not the typical girl, Ava. You've got this fire, and I never wanted to be the guy to put that out. He's sincere, and it hits me hard, right in the feels. Ethan, you're about the only person who hasn't tried to. I admit, feeling that weird warm fuzz that comes with too much truth and just enough wine. We talk plans, dream big about what comes next. Maybe a small wedding, something low-key, but real nice. We're both grinning like idiots by the time we leave, the cool night air doing nothing to sober the buzz. The wedding was a blast, a real fairy tale kind of day. There I was, in a white dress that made me feel like I was floating on air. Even Jane, my agent and old pal, was all teary-eyed, telling me how she was kindly jealous and throwing around big smiles. It felt like everything was falling right into place. Life with Ethan started out like we were living some kind of dream. We set up house together, and those early days felt full of promise. I was on fire creatively, spending long hours in my studio across town, splashing my thoughts and moods across canvases that just kept piling up. Ethan was all praises then, always saying how amazed he was at what I could create and how hard I worked. But you know how it is, the honeymoon phase doesn't last forever. It wasn't long before I started noticing a shift in Ethan. At first, it was just little signs, like him coming off a bit sharp over dinner or fussing over small stuff that didn't matter. Then it got more intense, especially about my paintings. "Why don't you just sell some of these, Ava?" he'd start in, his tone more accusing than questioning. "You've got dozens just gathering dust here." "They're for the upcoming exhibition, Ethan," I'd explain, trying to keep my cool. "It's important, you know this. It could really kick things up a notch for my career." But he wouldn't have it. "Look, we could use the money, Ava. And honestly, how many more do you need to keep?" Things got even more complicated when Jane started dropping by more often. I thought she'd have my back, but it turned out she was singing the same tune as Ethan. One afternoon, she came in laughing about something Ethan had said. "He's right, you know. We could practically wallpaper our houses with all the paintings you refuse to sell." Her words, meant as a joke, stung. I let it slide once, twice. But when it became their little running gag, I couldn't hold back any longer. One day, I pulled Jane aside after Ethan had cracked another one of those jokes at my expense, laughing like it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard. "Jane, we need to talk," I said, my voice low but firm. "I'm not okay with the jokes. And I'm not okay with you teaming up against me about my work." She looked taken aback, her face flushing with embarrassment or maybe guilt. "Ava, I didn't realize it was bothering you that much." "It is. And it stops now, or I'm finding a new agent," I said, not wanting to mince words. "Ava, come on, you know I was just messing around." Jane tried to smooth things over, her usual confidence slipping. "I'm sorry, really. It won't happen again." From then on, things were a bit tense. Ethan kept pushing, and Jane kept her distance, maybe out of guilt, maybe just laying low. I threw myself into my work even harder, partly because it was all I had left that felt right. I wasn't just creating art anymore, I was holding on to the only part of my life that still made sense. Suddenly the smell of paint and thinner, once my allies, had turned into my enemies. Just stepping into my studio made my stomach churn. At first, I chalked it up to stress or maybe a bug I caught, but when the morning started with me hugging the toilet, I knew it was more than just stress or bad takeout. So, I did the one thing that scared me more than a blank canvas. I bought a pregnancy test. Waiting for those lines to appear felt longer than waiting for paint to dry. And there it was, a positive. My heart was racing, a mix of fear and something like joy. I was going to be a mom. I couldn't wait to tell Ethan. I imagined him being thrilled, picturing us as one of those happy families in diaper commercials. But reality has a lousy way of knocking the wind out of you. I told him that evening, the positive test in my hand like some kind of peace offering. His face dropped, and not in a good way. "Ava, we can't do this right now. This is the worst timing," Ethan blurted out, his words like ice water down my back. "What do you mean, we can't do this?" "It's happening, Ethan. It's real," I said, my voice shaky. "We need to get rid of it. We're not ready to be parents." He was almost cold, detached. My heart felt like it was cracking right down the middle. "No, I can't do that. I won't," I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. "If you decide to keep it, don't expect anything from me." His words were a slap, harsh and stinging. I broke down after he left the room. I've never felt so alone. My whole life was about creating, and here I was, creating a life, and the man I loved was turning his back on it, and on me. I called Jane, hoping for some support, some understanding. But even she couldn't mask her hesitation. "Congrats, Ava, but are you sure about this? Maybe Ethan's right. This could really change things for you, for your art." She tiptoed around the edges of what she really wanted to say. "I didn't call to debate this, Jane. I thought you, of all people, would get it." I hung up, feeling the rift between us widen. With the studio now a no-go zone due to my sudden aversion to paint smells, I spent more time outside, walking in the park, trying to clear my head. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was on my own in this. Ethan became more distant each day, obsessed only with my work, or the lack of it. "When is your exhibition? When are you going to start selling again?" he would ask, not even trying to hide his frustration. I'd snap back. "It's on hold, okay? Can't you see I'm dealing with a bit more than just paintings here?" But he didn't see. Or he didn't want to. Our conversations turned into arguments, quick and sharp like a brush flicking too much paint off its bristles. I was alone, truly alone, but also determined. I had a new life growing inside me, and like my paintings, I was going to see it through, no matter how tough the audience. After weeks of battling morning sickness and steering clear of my studio, the day I felt like myself again, I couldn't wait to get back to my sanctuary. The smell of paint no longer made my stomach turn, and I was eager to lose myself in my work once more. But as soon as I stepped in, something felt off. A quick glance around, and I noticed gaps where there shouldn't be. Some of my paintings were missing. Panic knotted in my chest. I racked my brain. Had I moved them? Sold them and forgot? No way, I would remember selling my own work. I darted to the old PC tucked in the corner, the one hooked up to the security cameras I had installed years back when a local punk thought it'd be fun to tag the warehouse. I never thought I'd need them for anything more than scaring off vandals. Fast forward through hours of nothing, and then, there he was, Ethan, looking sketchy as hell. He was lifting my paintings, one by one, and then walking out. My heart raced. What the hell was he doing? Was he selling my work on the side? But why? I sat back, feeling like I'd been punched. I couldn't confront him, not yet. I needed more info. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number of a private investigator I'd found online, someone with good reviews who didn't look like they'd spill the beans for a quick buck. "Yeah, I need someone tailed. My husband. I think he's up to something bad," I told the PI, my voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. "Understood. We'll start following him today and keep you updated," the PI assured me. For the next 3 weeks, I was on edge, pretending everything was normal around Ethan while waiting for the investigators' calls. He updated me regularly, and the news wasn't good. Ethan was neck-deep in debt, something about bad business deals and loans coming due. It turned out he was using my paintings to keep his creditors at bay. The worst part? Jane was in on it. The two of them were a team, selling my originals and replacing them with fakes. The PI even got photos of them together, laughing, looking way too cozy. My friend and my husband, stabbing me in the back while smiling to my face. When I was alone, I'd replay their conversations in my mind. "I told you, Ava will never notice. She trusts us completely. Ethan's voice, smug and confident. Yeah, she's too stupid to notice anything even under her nose, Jane's reply, dripping with disdain. Their betrayal burned in my chest, a constant ache. But I pushed the pain down and focused on my plan. I couldn't tip them off that I knew. I started checking each of my paintings, comparing them to the photos I had on my computer. One by one, I identified the fakes. They were good, but not good enough to fool the artist's eye. I marked each replaced painting discreetly, deciding to keep this to myself until the exhibition. I wanted to expose them publicly, to show everyone their true faces. The day of the exhibition finally arrived. I was a bundle of nerves and anticipation. Everything had to be perfect, not just the art on the walls, but the performance I was about to put on. Dressed elegantly, accentuating my now noticeable pregnancy, I felt powerful, like a storm ready to break. The gallery was buzzing with guests when I arrived. Reporters, art critics, potential buyers, and everyday art lovers filled the space. Ethan and Jane were there too, mingling, laughing, looking like the picture of innocence. They had no idea what was coming. I took the podium, my hands steady, despite the turmoil inside. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, I began, my voice clear and confident. This exhibition was a labor of love, which, given recent personal challenges, was not easy to prepare. I am grateful for all the inspiration from my fans and the support from the community. The room filled with applause, and I nodded, acknowledging the support. But as the clapping died down, I continued. However, I must disclose something important before we proceed. A hush fell over the room. Cameras raised in anticipation, recording every second. I apologize, but many of my paintings here are fakes. Gasps echoed through the hall, and murmurs swirled like a gust of wind picking up leaves. The person responsible for this betrayal is someone I trusted deeply, my husband, Ethan, and his accomplice, my agent and supposed friend, Jane. The shock was palpable. Ethan's face drained of color, and Jane's eyes widened in panic. I have proof of their deceit. I signaled to the tech guy, and the screen behind me lit up, showing video footage from the workshop. There was Ethan, sneaking out with my original paintings, and then replacing them with fakes. The crowd erupted in whispers. I let them soak it in before I played the audio recordings, the nail in the coffin. Ethan's voice filled the room, mocking my ignorance and detailing their scheme to use my art to settle his debts. Jane's laughter, cruel and dismissive, followed. I was a fool, but not because I didn't know, I said into the mic, my voice firm. But because I trusted without question. That ends today. Reporters swarmed around Ethan and Jane, firing questions faster than bullets. They stumbled over their words, their excuses feeble and unsatisfying. As they tried to leave, the police entered, moving through the crowd and straight to them. They read their rights and cuffed them, all while cameras flashed and recorded every moment. The room erupted into applause, not just for the drama, but for the resilience I'd shown. I stood there, hand on my belly, feeling my daughter kick as if in approval. The fallout from the exhibition scandal turned my life upside down, but this time in a good way. My paintings, once confined to my studio and the occasional gallery wall, were now in high demand. Prices for my work skyrocketed as art lovers clamored to own a piece of the story. With the rush of new attention, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Interviews, talk show invites, and gallery offers flooded in. It was overwhelming but exhilarating. "You're a hot commodity, Ava." My new agent, Mike, chuckled over the phone. He was a straight shooter, recommended by a fellow artist who swore by his honesty. "We've got to strike while the iron's hot." Amidst the chaos, the most profound change came quietly, a baby girl with her mother's stubborn streak and her father's deep blue eyes. Holding her for the first time, I felt a surge of protectiveness. "I'll call you Mia," I whispered. She was my new beginning. The divorce from Ethan was messy, but swift. My lawyer was a bulldog, fighting tooth and nail for every penny of compensation and child support. "He'll pay for what he did, Ava. Not just in cash," he had promised me early on, and he delivered. The day Ethan and Jane were sentenced was a spectacle. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. I sat in the front row, Mia cradled against my chest, a silent observer to her parents' past unfolding. Ethan couldn't meet my gaze. He and Jane looked small, deflated, gone was the arrogance and the smug smiles. When the judge handed down the sentence, short prison terms but long-lasting public disgrace, they merely nodded, accepting their fate without a word. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. Mia grew quick as a flash, giggling and babbling her way into everyone's hearts. My studio became my sanctuary once again, only this time with a crib in the corner and baby toys scattered among paint tubes. Mike was a godsend, handling the business side with a deft touch that left me free to create. "You've got a gallery opening in New York next month," he informed me one afternoon as I dabbed at a canvas, Mia playing at my feet. "New York, huh? Sounds like a big deal," I mused, not pausing my brushstrokes. And so, with my past tucked away like the darker colors on my palette, I painted my future in bright, bold strokes. Mia's laughter filled the air, a sweeter melody than any acclaim or applause. It's been 3 years since the dust settled on the chaos that was my old life. 3 years, and I've carved out a space for myself and Mia that's about as peaceful as it gets. We're living in a cozy house with a sprawling backyard where Mia can run around and I can breathe easy. My art? It's taken off in ways I only dreamed of. Collaborating with galleries, my paintings fetching prices that make me do a double take, it's all still a bit surreal. I was in the middle of setting up a new canvas in the makeshift studio I rigged up in the garage when my phone buzzed. The screen flashed Ethan's name. Hesitating just a second, I answered, bracing myself. "Ava, it's Ethan. I've been thinking a lot since everything. I'm out now, and I want to apologize, Ava. Truly. And I was hoping." "You're hoping what, Ethan? Hoping I've forgotten everything? Hoping I'd just let you waltz back into our lives?" I cut him off, not needing to hear the rest. No, it's not like that. I don't expect anything, Ava. I want to see Mia. I want to be a part of her life. I'm her father. I sighed, a heavy, tired sound. "You lost the right to call yourself that when you decided your debts were more important than your family." "I know I messed up, I do. I've changed, Ava. I have," he pleaded, his voice cracking a bit. "Good for you, Ethan. Really. But Mia's doing just fine without you. We both are. You're not part of this life anymore." I wasn't just throwing words, I meant every one of them. Can I at least send her something? For her birthday or Christmas?" His voice was smaller now, almost lost. "You can send it to Mike, my agent. He'll make sure it's appropriate before it gets to her. That's the best I can offer you." Another pause, then a quiet, "Okay. Thank you, Ava. Goodbye, Ethan." I hung up before he could say anything else, my hand shaking just a bit as I put the phone down. Mia came barreling into the studio then, all giggles and energy, her hair a mess from playing outside. "Mommy, look what I made." She held up a drawing, a swirl of colors that only a child's mind could dream up. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I said, pulling her into a hug, the earlier phone call already fading from my mind. "Absolutely beautiful." Life had a funny way of balancing out. For every bad memory, there was a moment like this, so full of joy and innocence it made everything else seem small. I was making art, raising my daughter, and living a life I had fought hard to reclaim. No, it wasn't always easy, but it was ours, and it was filled with more love and laughter than I ever thought possible. The galleries kept calling, Mia kept growing, and I kept painting, our days a canvas that we filled together, bold and bright. Ethan was just a shadow, a part of a past chapter that was closed and done. As Mia tugged on my hand, pulling me back to her world of make-believe and masterpieces, I knew we were exactly where we needed to be. In a home filled with love, light, and the laughter of a little girl who knew she was the heart of her mother's universe. Hey there, I'm Julie. Let me lay this out straight, running a business ain't no cakewalk, but it's all I've known since Pop's passed. Dad was a self-made man, built a sports nutrition empire from the ground up. When he was gone, it fell to me and my big bro, Max, to keep the ship steady. He took the helm as CEO, and I jumped into the HR director's chair. It was early October, crisp leaves, you know the drill. Max and I were holed up in his office, one of those typical mornings, jam-packed with meetings and decisions. Julie, we need to double-check these hiring protocols. We can't afford slip-ups, Max said, shuffling papers like they were hot potatoes. Got it, Max. I'll tighten up the interviews. No more duds, promise. I shot back, scribbling notes. Our chatter was cut short by Linda, Max's assistant, poking her head in. Max, your 10 o'clock is here. Max nodded. Thanks, Linda. Let's wrap this up, Julie. Remember, quality over quantity. That evening, unwinding was on the agenda, so I hit up a local bar with some pals. Little did I know, life had a curveball lined up. That's where I bumped into Jake. Sports journalist, flashy blogger type, always with a camera in hand. He had that cheeky grin, said he recognized me from some industry bash. You're Julie, right? The nutrition guru, he said, sidling up to the bar where I was perched. Guilty as charged. And you're Jake, the sports pundit who can't hold his liquor. I quipped, recalling his less than stellar performance at a recent event. Jake laughed, his ego intact. Fair shot. But let me make it up to you. Can I buy you a drink? I was about to brush him off, but curiosity got the better of me. Sure, why not? But keep it classy, no beer goggle specials. As the night wore on, Jake's charm wasn't just the booze talking. He was smart, knew his stuff. But I wasn't one to dive headfirst without checking the water. A few months later, things got serious, and Max, always the protective type, called me for a chat in his office, which looked more like a fortress with all its plush trappings. Julie, about Jake, Max started, no hellos, no how are yas. You sure about this guy? He's slicker than a wet driveway. I know, Max. But he's different. At least, he seems like it. I defended, knowing full well Max's meter for BS was off the charts. Max leaned in, his voice low. Just watch yourself. And for heaven's sake, get a prenup. Don't let him near the finances. Relax, big bro. It's under control. We'll sort the prenup. Jake wasn't thrilled about the prenup talk, thought it was a trust breaker. But too bad, it was non-negotiable. So, he signed. Grumbling, but signed all the same. Settling into married life with Jake felt like stepping onto a roller coaster that only went up, at first. Jake moved into my place, a sprawling house that Dad left me. It was more space than I ever needed, but soon enough, Jake made sure it felt like a celebrity hotspot. One lazy Saturday morning, I found Jake in the garden, setting up a tripod with his camera pointed at the house. He was framing the shot like he was directing a blockbuster. What's the big setup for, Jake? I asked, coffee in hand. Content day, babe. Gotta keep the feed fresh, he said without looking up. This backdrop is gold, makes for killer views. You mean my house? I frowned. Just make sure you don't tell everyone it's yours. Jake chuckled, patting me on the shoulder as if I'd told a good joke. Relax, Julie. It's all showbiz. You get it, right? Gotta sell the dream. As weeks rolled on, these content days became more elaborate. Rented luxury cars appeared in our driveway, and designer clothes draped over our furniture like we were running a boutique. One evening, I caught Jake sorting through a pile of flashy watches and gadgets. The living room was a mess, like a scene from one of those reality shows where people spend like there's no tomorrow. Planning to open a pawn shop with all this, or what? I teased, trying to keep the mood light. All props, Julie. It's for the gram. You know, gotta keep up with the Joneses, Jake replied, his eyes glued to his phone screen as he scrolled through comments and likes. It wasn't just the props. Bills started piling up, too. Jake made sure we were seen at every hotspot in town, all while the credit card bills stacked like a house of cards. One night, I came home to find Jake in the midst of what looked like a mini film crew in our living room. He was all dressed up, giving a tour of our house as if it were a grand estate on some luxury real estate show. "Jake, can I talk to you for a second?" I pulled him aside, my patience wearing thin. "Sure, babe, what's up?" He flashed his camera-ready smile, not missing a beat. All this, I waved around at the lights, the people. "It's too much. You're turning our home into a circus." Jake's face hardened for a moment, then softened as he took my hands in his. "Julie, babe, trust me, this is good for us. These videos? They're blowing up. It's all about branding, babe. We're getting tons of traction here. Just enjoy the ride." One evening over a casual dinner at home, which had become a rarity given our hectic schedules, Jake brought up an idea that initially sounded promising. "Hey, Julie, I've been thinking," Jake started, his tone casual as he passed me the salad bowl. "Why not use my blog to give the family business a little boost? I could do a feature on the sports nutrition products. It'd be a fun project." I was intrigued, if a bit cautious. Mixing personal and professional wasn't always a recipe for success. "Really? That sounds great, but how much is this going to cost us?" I asked, trying to tread lightly. Jake smiled, waving his hand dismissively as he took another bite. "Oh, come on, it's family. I wouldn't charge you guys. We'll do it for free. Just think of the exposure it could bring." The next day, full of optimism, I brought Jake to Max's office to discuss the proposal. I figured it would be a straightforward meeting. After all, Jake was offering to do the promo for free. Walking into Max's office, I felt a buoyant sense of pride in Jake's generous offer. "Max, Jake has a great idea to boost our product line through his blog," I began, smiling at Jake. Jake nodded and took over with confidence. "Thanks, Julie. So, Max, I've got a decent follower base, and I was thinking of shooting some high-quality videos about your products. Put them up on my blog, maybe even do a series. It could really drive some traffic and increase sales. Best part? I'm happy to do it as a family favor." Max seemed pleasantly surprised, leaning back in his chair with a cautious smile. "Really? That's a generous offer, Jake. It sounds like a good opportunity for some extra visibility. What's the catch?" Jake hesitated just a moment too long before delivering the bombshell. "Well, when I said free, I meant no out-of-pocket costs up front. But to cover production quality, editing, marketing, I'd need about 25 grand. The room's temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Max's face hardened, and I felt my own smile falter into confusion. $25,000? "Jake, last night you said this would be free," I interjected, my voice a mix of surprise and disappointment. Jake's confident demeanor didn't waver. "Yeah, free as in I'm not making a profit off this. That's just to cover the expenses. It's standard for this kind of work." Max's expression was unreadable for a moment before he spoke. "Jake, we're talking about promoting my sister's, your wife's, company. This isn't just any client. Charging us 25 grand doesn't sound like a family favor." Jake stood a bit straighter, his response defensive. "It's business, Max. That's how things work in media. You want professional quality, you have to pay for it." The meeting ended abruptly, with Max politely but firmly declining Jake's proposal. As we left his office, the air between Jake and me was thick with unsaid things. I felt a chasm opening up, one that was filled with doubts about Jake's intentions and his understanding of what family meant to me. Life at home was growing colder by the day, and work was my only refuge. To keep the company on track and take some of the load off my shoulders, I decided it was time to bring on a new finance director. That's when Lauren entered the picture, bright, driven, and sharp as a tack. She was just the kind of talent our company needed. Lauren quickly became more than just an employee, she was a trusted advisor. She often joined my brother Max and me for our brainstorming sessions at my house. These meetings were crucial for the future of our business, filled with lively discussions and bold ideas. Lauren's insights were invaluable, bringing fresh perspectives that even Max, with all his experience, appreciated. Jake, however, didn't share our enthusiasm. Whenever he was around, he seemed disinterested, lounging with a glass of wine, more spectator than participant. His boredom was palpable, his contributions minimal. As the months rolled by, Jake's absences became more frequent. His business trips seemed to take him away for days, sometimes weeks at a time. I tried to keep up with his blog, watching his posts for any sign of what was really going on. But everything there was just as polished and perfect as ever, smiling faces, exotic locations, and no hint of anything amiss. Part of me was relieved, thinking maybe this was just the life of a sports journalist. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Max dropped by for coffee. We sat in the kitchen, a rare moment of calm between us. That's when he brought it up, casually stirring his coffee. "Julie, I've noticed you and Jake haven't been around much together. Everything okay?" I bristled at his words, the spoon in my hand clinking louder against the mug than I intended. "What's that supposed to mean, Max? Just because we don't have dinners together every night?" "Jake's busy, I'm busy. We're both just doing our thing." Max studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, Julie. Just remember, I'm here if you need to talk. About anything, okay?" His words, meant to comfort, only made the pit in my stomach grow. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Thanks, Max. I know. I'm fine, really." But as the days turned into weeks, and Jake's brief appearances at home became even rarer, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me. Was I just being paranoid? Or was there more to Jake's trips than meets the eye? One night, lying in bed alone, I couldn't sleep. My phone was in my hand before I knew it, scrolling through old messages and pictures of Jake and me. We looked happy, carefree. I missed that. I missed him. The night was supposed to be a celebration of our company's success. We had just hit a major profit milestone, and Max had gone all out for the party. The venue was decked with elegant decor, the buffet was lavish, and the air buzzed with the chatter of our proud team. As the evening wore on, the weight of my earlier decision to confront Jake loomed over me. He had been mingling, camera in hand, seemingly more interested in capturing the perfect shot than celebrating our achievement. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, I stepped out into the quieter foyer to catch my breath. That's when I saw him. Jake, not alone, tucked away behind a half-drawn curtain. My heart skipped as I thought to steal a moment with him, to maybe smooth over the growing rift between us. I moved closer, my steps silent on the plush carpet. But the closer I got, the clearer the conversation became. It wasn't just innocent laughter, it was intimate, secretive. My pace slowed, and I stopped just short of revealing myself, hidden by the shadow of the partition. Jake was there with Lauren, our finance director. His hands were on her, pulling her close in a way that made my stomach churn. Her laughter tinkled through the air, a sound I had come to appreciate for entirely different reasons. "And once Julie's money hits our account, we're set," Jake whispered, his words like daggers. "We can finally get out of here, buy that house in Mexico, just like we wanted." Lauren giggled, her voice dripping with contempt. "Can you believe how easy it was? She's such a stupid chicken, clueless and loaded." Their laughter cut through me, sharp and mocking. My breath caught in my throat, heart pounding with a cocktail of hurt and fury. How long had this been going on? How could I have been so blind? I backed away quietly, ensuring they didn't notice me. My mind raced as I returned to the party, finding Max in the crowd. His face was lit up with pride and joy, sharing a joke with some of our top managers. I pulled him aside, my voice a hushed urgent whisper. "Max, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Let's find somewhere private." Once secluded, I spilled everything. Every word, every laugh I had overheard. Max's face hardened with each detail, his initial shock turning to icy fury. "We'll handle this, Julie," he said, his voice low and steady. We'll get auditors to go through the accounts first thing tomorrow. I'll also find a detective. We need solid evidence." His decisiveness was a bomb, and his next words were a vow. "They won't get away with this. Not against my sister, not against our company." We returned to the party, our faces masks of composure. Inside, I was reeling, but outwardly, I was calm, even as Jake and Lauren rejoined the group, laughing, oblivious to the storm coming their way. The morning after the party, I was up early, driven by a mix of adrenaline and resolve. I met Max at the office, before anyone else had arrived. He had already lined up meetings with some of the best auditors in the city and was on the phone trying to secure a reputable private detective. "Julie, I've got someone coming in at 9. He's supposed to be one of the best," Max said as soon as I walked into his office. His face was stern, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. The auditors arrived, a team of 3, each with a laptop and a briefcase full of what I assumed were tools of their trade. They set up in one of our conference rooms, and Max and I briefed them on the situation without going into too many personal details. "We've noticed some discrepancies in our accounts, small transactions that don't add up," Max explained, his voice firm. "We need a thorough check of all transactions for the past 6 months." The lead auditor, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet, nodded. "We'll start with the bank statements, cross-reference them with your ledgers, and track every transaction. It might take a few days, but we'll find out where your money's been going." Later that afternoon, the private detective Max had hired came in. He was a middle-aged man named Carl, with a demeanor that was all business. "Mr. Marshall told me you're dealing with potential internal fraud," Carl said, settling into the chair in Max's office. "Yes, and possibly more than that," I said, meeting his gaze. "We think it's linked to a personal matter as well." Carl nodded, jotting down notes. "I'll need access to certain information, bank records, employee details, communications if possible. Anything that can help paint a clearer picture of what's been going on." As the days passed, the atmosphere in the office was tense. I continued to work, interact with staff, and even speak with Jake and Lauren, though every conversation felt like walking on glass shards. Finally, the auditors called us into the conference room to present their findings. The news was as bad as we feared. Janet laid it out for us. We found numerous irregular transactions, totaling just over $2 million. All directed to an account that, after some digging, appears to be in Mr. Jake Thompson's name. I sat there, numb, the finality of it all settling in my stomach like lead. But there was more. Carl had his report ready too. I'd been following Mr. Thompson and Ms. Lauren Aronson. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. I've got photos of them together, receipts for a car he bought her, and jewelry. Lots of it. He laid the photos on the table, each one a knife in my heart. They've also bought tickets to Mexico. Looks like they plan to leave in 4 months. And there's this, Carl continued, handing over a document. Mr. Thompson has secured a job with a media company in Mexico, under a work visa processed 2 months ago. I listened, each word Carl said fueling the cold fire inside me. "Anything else?" I asked, my voice steady. "They're waiting on a final transfer of funds into their account. Looks like they're planning one big score before they leave," Carl concluded. As we wrapped up, I knew what had to be done. The pain of betrayal was deep, but it sharpened my resolve. Jake and Lauren would pay for their treachery, and I would make sure of it. As the end of the year neared, I planned a pre-Christmas celebration like no other. The famous restaurant, decked in holiday style, filled quickly with the buzz of excited employees. I knew Jake would see this as another opportunity to showcase his glamorous life, oblivious to the storm brewing. Jake entered the venue in a sharp suit, his smile wide as he narrated into his camera. "Here we are at one of the city's most exclusive spots, celebrating a fantastic year," he broadcasted live to his followers. Cameras I had installed earlier rolled quietly, capturing every moment for the climax I had meticulously planned. Midway through the evening, with applause still echoing for the employee awards, I took the stage. Now, for a very special recognition, I announced, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I called Lauren up. For outstanding performance and dedication, this year's top honor goes to our finance director, Lauren Aronson. The applause was warm as she joined me on stage, a puzzled smile on her face as I handed her a beautifully wrapped box. "Open this later," I whispered, and she nodded, stepping down with her prize. Finally, it was time for the grand finale. I called Jake up to the stage, my heart pounding against my ribs. "And now, a special thanks to someone who has shared much of my life's journey," I began, my voice echoing across the room. The room quieted, all eyes on us. Jake beamed, soaking in the adoration, completely unaware. I handed him a similar box. "Please, open this now." Confusion flickered across his face as he lifted the lid, his hands trembling slightly. The color drained from his face as he stared down at the divorce papers and the stack of photographs, images of him with Lauren, unmistakable in their intimacy. The silence was deafening. Jake's eyes met mine, and I could see the realization crashing down on him. His live feed was still running, broadcasting his disgrace for all to see. "Now," I continued, turning to Lauren, who stood frozen near her seat, "would you please open your gift?" With shaking hands, Lauren unwrapped her box to reveal receipts for the luxury car Jake had bought her, and the damning account statements of the stolen money. Murmurs filled the room as the evidence displayed on a large screen behind me. "I loved a man I thought I knew," I addressed the crowd, my voice breaking the stunned silence. "But he, along with our finance director, plotted to steal not just money from our company but also our trust and future." Jake's voice cracked as he grabbed the microphone. "It was all her idea. She seduced me into this mess," he blurted, pointing a trembling finger at Lauren. Lauren's face contorted with rage as she stormed the stage. "You liar! You promised me a life together." She slapped him, the sound echoing, as the crowd gasped. Max stepped forward, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "The police are on their way. Both of you will answer for what you've done," he declared, his voice booming over the mic. The room erupted into chaos as the police arrived, handcuffing Jake and Lauren amidst their protests. I watched, a complex knot of relief and sorrow in my chest, as they were led away. Jake's live feed of the pre-Christmas event had gone viral, catapulting the whole sordid affair into the public eye. My phone was buzzing nonstop, notifications piling up from viewers who had watched everything unfold. "Start your own blog" became a recurring suggestion. I chuckled at that. Me, a blogger? As the dust settled, the legal ramifications kicked in full force. I filed for divorce immediately, and with the evidence stacked high against Jake, it was a straightforward process. The court granted me a significant financial settlement due to his fraud and betrayal. Lauren, caught in her own web of lies, faced the courts too. She pleaded guilty to embezzlement, returned every stolen dollar, and watched her professional credentials dissolve before her eyes. Banned from holding any significant corporate position, her career was effectively over. Jake's life unraveled spectacularly. The Mexican media company, having caught wind of his misdeeds, terminated his contract, citing moral clause violations. Other agencies and networks shied away, not wanting to associate with someone so publicly disgraced. His subscriber count plummeted as fans abandoned ship, and eventually, he shut down his blog, his primary source of income gone. One evening, several weeks after the trial, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Jake, a shadow of his former self. He looked worn, his eyes pleading. "Julie, I'm so sorry. I was wrong, so terribly wrong. Can we talk?" His voice was hoarse, desperate. I stood there, the cool evening breeze brushing against my face, considering the man I had once loved. "Talk? After everything you've done? There's nothing left to say, Jake." My voice was calm but firm. "But I've lost everything. I need help. Please, Julie," he implored, taking a step forward. I shook my head, my resolve steel. "You made your choices, Jake. Now you live with them. Goodbye." I closed the door softly but firmly, cutting off any further pleas. Turning away from the door, I felt a surge of strength. It was over. I was free from his deceit. With renewed vigor and trust, Max and I steered our company into new ventures and expansions. The support from the community was overwhelming, and in time, I did start that blog. As for Jake, I heard he moved away, a ghost of his former self, searching for a fresh start. I didn't wish him ill, but he was part of a chapter that was firmly closed, locked away in the archives of lessons learned. Hey, I'm Elizabeth, and I want to tell you about the day everything started to change in my family. I've got a younger sister, Lucy, who's always been more the quiet type, and then there's me, I'm not so quiet. Mom, Jane, used to be like any other mom, you know, regular and all, and Dad, Thomas, well, he's always been the sturdy type, like a rock or something. Our lives were plain, nothing fancy, just ordinary and happy, until that one day. It all started when Mom's friend, Carla, talked her into going to this self-help seminar. "It'll change your life, Jane," I overheard her saying over the phone. They were always chatting about new diets or some sale, but this seemed different. I didn't think much of it at first. Mom was into her books and talks, and Dad and I figured it was just another hobby she'd picked up. But when she came back from that seminar, it was like she had switched into someone else. She was buzzing, couldn't stop talking about unlocking potential and tapping into unseen wealth. "Thomas, you've got to come with me next time. The speakers, the ideas, they're revolutionary," she gushed at dinner that night. Dad just chuckled, shoving a forkful of mashed potato into his mouth. "Sounds like a load of hot air to me. How much did you say you paid for this?" Mom's face fell a bit. "It's not about the money, Tom. It's about the experience, the growth." "Sure, Janie, as long as it makes you happy. But don't go wasting our savings on every little scheme they sell you," Dad warned, a stern edge to his voice. Things started changing quickly after that. Mom quit her job at the post office, where she'd been for nearly 15 years. "I'm not wasting another minute on that dead-end job. I'm going to invest in opportunities that'll triple our income, you'll see," she declared one evening out of the blue. Her ideas of opportunities included stuff like buying heaps of lottery tickets, sinking money into some online trading platforms, and even attending more and more of those cash-draining seminars. Dad didn't take any of that well. "Jane, you've got to stop. This isn't like you. We have girls to think about, college to save for," he'd argue night after night. "Oh, stop being such an old worrywart, Tom. You've got to spend money to make money. It's called investing." Mom shot back, her patience thinning. They thought we didn't hear them, but Lucy and I heard a lot. Their fights about money, about Mom's new friends who Dad called con artists and swindlers. It got so bad I sometimes wished I could just shut them out, maybe with noise-canceling headphones or something. One day, I came home to find Mom in the living room, papers and brochures strewn all over the coffee table. She looked up, her face flushed with excitement. "Beth, come here, look at this. It's a new investment fund, says it can double our input in 6 months." I frowned, glancing over the glossy pamphlet. "Mom, this looks risky." "Are you sure about it?" "Darling, risk is just the first step to success. You think all those rich folks got where they are by playing it safe?" She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. After Mom went all in with her so-called investment fund, it was like watching a slow train wreck. Every day, she'd be glued to her computer, eyes flickering over stock charts and exclusive webinar invites, talking to her new friends who were just as deep into this mess as she was. "Beth, you gotta listen to this guy. He turned his whole life around, made a fortune out of thin air." Mom would exclaim, trying to get me to watch one of her videos. I'd just nod, keeping my doubts to myself because arguing with her had become pointless. Dad, on the other hand, wasn't having any of it. One night, I caught them in the kitchen, voices raised higher than usual. Dad was holding a credit card bill, the kind that made your stomach drop. "Jane, what the hell is this? $2,000 on what? More of your damn seminars?" Dad's voice was like a sledgehammer, and Mom flinched but shot back just as hard. "You're so small-minded. You have to spend money to make money, Tom. That's how the world works," Mom retorted, her voice sharp as a knife. I remember Lucy coming into the room then, her eyes wide and scared. She hated their fights more than anything. "Can you guys not do this now?" she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Stay out of this, Lucy. This is adult business," Mom snapped without turning around, which only made Lucy shrink back, looking helplessly at me. I wrapped an arm around her, wishing I could just whisk us away from all the yelling. The worst part was, it wasn't just the fights. It was seeing how each argument left them, Dad, deflated, sitting at the table with his head in his hands, and Mom, storming off to call one of her business partners to vent. It all came crashing down the day the electricity got cut. I came home to find the lights out, and Mom at the table, surrounded by bills and notices. "Electric's out," she muttered as I walked in, her voice tired and frustrated. "We're a bit tight this month, couldn't make the payment." "A bit tight? Mom, this is serious. We need electricity. What about all the money from your investments?" My voice rose, the worry making my words sharper than I intended. Mom's face crumpled, her usual fiery comeback gone. "It's just not available right now." "That means it's gone, Mom. What are we supposed to do now? How are we supposed to live like this?" I threw my bag on the floor, frustration taking over. Lucy started crying, and I hated it. I hated that she had to deal with this, that we all did. "I'm sorry, girls. I'm trying, I really am," Mom said, her voice breaking, and for a moment, I saw the old her, the mom who used to make sure everything was okay. But sorry wasn't enough to fix this. Sorry wouldn't turn the lights back on. We were all stuck in Mom's sinking ship, and it felt like we were only going deeper down. The real blow came a week before my high school graduation. It was supposed to be a time for celebration, but instead, it turned into the biggest fight we'd ever seen at home. I was in my room trying on my graduation gown when I heard shouting from downstairs. It was loud, even for them. "Jane, how could you do this to us, to your own daughter?" Dad's voice boomed through the house. I rushed down, my heart pounding, to find Mom and Dad in the kitchen, papers scattered all over the counter. Mom looked cornered, her face all flushed, while Dad was holding a bank statement, his hands shaking. "What's going on?" I demanded, glancing between them. "Your mother. She took the money, Elizabeth. The money we saved for your college," Dad said, barely getting the words out. The room spun around me. My college fund, gone? Just like that? I felt like I was going to throw up. "This is unbelievable, Jane. You've crossed a line. How are we supposed to trust you after this?" Dad was yelling now, his face red. "I was going to fix it, Tom. You have to believe me. I didn't mean for it to go this way." Mom was almost pleading now. "Fix it? How, Jane? How exactly were you going to fix this mess?" Dad shouted back. Lucy appeared at the kitchen doorway, her eyes wide with fear. "Stop yelling. Just stop it," she screamed, and suddenly it was like all the air got sucked out of the room. Mom and Dad stopped and looked at her, but Lucy turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Beth, what's going to happen now?" she sobbed. I hugged her tight, not knowing what to say to make any of this better. "I don't know, Luce, I really don't," I murmured, feeling her shake in my arms. The argument died down after that, but the damage was done. Dad moved out of the house that same night. He packed his bags, saying he needed time to think away from Mom and all the chaos she'd caused. Mom tried to act like everything was normal the next morning, making breakfast and chattering about plans to recover the money. But it was all just noise to me. My head was filled with a million worries about the future. That evening, I found Mom looking through more papers, probably searching for another quick fix. "Mom, why? Why did you do it? Didn't you think about me, about what I'd lose?" I asked, needing to understand. "Elizabeth, I really believed it would work. I wanted to give you more than we ever had, not take away. I thought I was doing the right thing, she said, her voice low. But you weren't thinking about me, not really. You were thinking about the money, I said, the truth stinging both of us. Mom didn't have an answer. She just sat there, looking lost and defeated. And for the first time, I saw her not as my mom, but as someone who had let her dreams get bigger than her family. It was the kind of realization that changed everything, how I saw her, how I saw our life up to that point. After Dad left, things spiraled faster than I thought possible. He remarried quickly and moved to another city, trying to start fresh, I guess. At first, he called to check on Lucy and me, but those calls stopped coming. Mom had blocked his number and told a story about how Dad had turned his back on us, how he was living it up with his new wife and didn't care to send a dime our way. He's forgotten about us, just like that, she'd say with a bitterness that colored her every word. I wanted to believe differently, but with Mom controlling all the communication, what else could I think? It was just Lucy, Mom, and me now. College was out of the picture. With no money and no prospects, I took a job at a local diner. It wasn't what I had planned, but dreams had to take a backseat to reality. I was now the one bringing home whatever money I could to keep us afloat. Every paycheck I handed over to Mom, hoping she'd sort out the mess of debts she'd gotten us into. But it seemed like for every step I took to pull us out of the hole, she found a way to dig us deeper. She wasn't working, just constantly hatching new schemes to strike it rich. It's just around the corner, Elizabeth, I can feel it, she'd say every time I questioned her plans. One evening, after a long shift at the diner, I saw her getting kicked out of the local casino. She was a mess, screaming about being just one win away from getting it all back. I hurried over, my heart sinking. Mom, what are you doing here? I thought you were at home with Lucy, I said, grabbing her arm to steady her. Let go, Elizabeth. I had it under control. Today was just a bad day, that's all. Tomorrow, I'll win it back, double. She snapped, yanking her arm free. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Mom, you're gambling now? With what money? I have my ways. And I found a surefire technique online, it'll change everything, she said, her eyes wild with a desperate kind of hope. A technique? Mom, that's nonsense. You're throwing away everything on a fantasy. Gambling's a trap. It's designed to make the casino rich, not us. I tried to reason with her, but she wouldn't hear it. She just shook her head. You'll see. I'll fix everything. I just need one good run. The next day, she was gone again, back to the casino, as if our conversation had never happened. I felt so helpless, watching her disappear into her delusions, while I scrambled to cover our bills and keep Lucy from seeing how bad things had really gotten. Lucy was turning 15 soon, and I knew exactly what I wanted to get her, a set of clothes that would make her feel like she belonged with her friends, who always dressed in the latest styles. She'd been making do with hand-me-downs and clearance rack finds for too long. So, I started setting aside a bit of cash from each paycheck, stashing it away in a small box on my shelf. It was supposed to be a surprise, a good one, something that'd light up her face. I was at the diner when it happened. I came home late, my feet aching from the long shift, dreaming of the look on Lucy's face when she'd see her gift. But the house was chaos. Mom was in a frenzy, the box that held the birthday money in her hands, her face twisted in anger. You're stealing from your own family, Elizabeth? Hiding money for yourself? Is this what you do with the money you earn? You're a nasty rat, that's what you are, she screamed as soon as I stepped through the door. What? No, Mom, that's for Lucy's birthday. I saved it to buy her some clothes. I tried to explain, reaching for the box, but Mom jerked it away. Mom's face was red, her eyes wild. I trusted you, and you betray me like this. You're no daughter of mine. Get out. She shoved the box of money into her purse and pointed to the door. Lucy rushed downstairs, drawn by the yelling. Mom, Beth's telling the truth. She saved that for me. She tried to mediate, her voice shaky. Mom turned on her. And you? You could have been helping out, earning some money. But no, you just sit around studying, protecting your thief sister. I'm trying to finish school, Mom. We agreed on that. Lucy cried out, her own patience breaking. That's enough. I want both of you out. You're both ungrateful. I don't need you here. Mom shouted, her fury boiling over. I grabbed Lucy's hand, my mind racing. Come on, let's go, I said, pulling her toward the door. We stepped out into the cold night, the door slamming shut behind us, our mother's angry shout still echoing as it closed. Lucy clung to me, sobbing uncontrollably. Beth, what are we going to do now? Where will we go? She whimpered, her voice muffled against my jacket. I held her close, trying to muster a calm I didn't feel. I don't know, Luce, but we'll figure something out. We have to, I said, my voice trembling. We stood there, outside the house that no longer felt like home, shivering not just from the cold but from the shock. How had things gone so wrong? How had our mother, the woman who used to hug us and make everything okay, turned into someone we hardly recognized? Lucy and I huddled together on a park bench, clutching our phones like lifelines. The night was chilly, making each breath visible in the pale light of the street lamps. We could call Dad, Lucy suggested quietly, her voice small. Yeah, I agreed, though a lump formed in my throat. It had been so long since we'd spoken. What if he really had moved on? What if he didn't want us? But we were out of options, and honestly, I was out of pride. I scrolled through my contacts, finding the number Mom had made me block years ago. My fingers hesitated, then dialed. The phone rang, and my heart pounded with each tone. Hello? Dad's voice came through, sounding cautious. Dad, it's Elizabeth, and Lucy, I managed to say, my voice cracking. Elizabeth? Lucy? Oh my God, girls, are you okay? Where are you? His voice changed instantly, thick with concern. We need help, Dad. Can we come see you? I asked, the words nearly a whisper. Of course, girls. Tell me where you are, I'll send money for train tickets right now, he said without hesitation. Tears welled up in my eyes. Thank you, Dad, I choked out. True to his word, the money came through within the hour. By the next morning, Lucy and I were on a train heading to Dad's city, our hearts heavy with the past, but hopeful for the future. Arriving at Dad's place felt surreal. He was waiting at the station, looking older but also relieved as he pulled us both into a tight hug. His wife, Sandra, stood beside him, giving us a warm, welcoming smile that eased some of my tension. Let's get you girls home and warmed up, Dad said, guiding us to his car. Once we were settled in and sipping hot tea in their cozy kitchen, Lucy and I shared everything. How Mom had spiraled, the lies, the eviction. Dad listened, his face growing tighter with each word we said. I had no idea, Dad finally spoke, his voice heavy. I've been sending money for alimony and your studies every month. I thought you girls were okay. We never saw any of that money, Dad. Mom told us you stopped helping. I admitted, feeling a mix of anger and relief as the truth came out. Dad's hands clenched into fists. I'm so sorry, girls. I should have found a way to make sure. I never should have let her cut me off from you. It's not your fault, Dad, Lucy said, her voice gentle. Dad looked at us, his eyes filled with a kind of pain that made my chest tighten. I want to make this right. Elizabeth, if you still want to go to college, I'll support you. And Lucy, there's a great school not far from here. You can start fresh. Sandra, who had been quietly supportive, spoke up. I'll contact my lawyer tomorrow. We'll sort out where the alimony went and deal with your mother's legal rights. Lucy should be with us, legally and safely. I looked at Sandra, seeing her not just as Dad's wife, but as someone who was stepping up to help fix our broken pieces. I got up and hugged her, grateful beyond words. A month had flown by in a blur of new beginnings and healing wounds, with Dad and Sandra's support making every day easier. But then, out of nowhere, Mom called. Her voice was sharp, demanding, as if nothing had changed. Elizabeth, You need to come back home now. I've stopped receiving the alimony, and everything's falling apart here, she stated flatly as soon as I answered. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. Mom, I'm not coming back. Lucy and I are staying with Dad. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. You ungrateful traitors. After everything I've done for you. Done for us? Mom, you lied to us. You used the money Dad sent for yourself. You even kicked us out. We know everything. I shot back, the old pain and anger bubbling up. There was a screech of rage from her, loud enough that I had to pull the phone away from my ear. Don't you dare speak to me like that. I'm still your mother. Being a mother isn't just about giving birth. It's about being there, and you weren't. I don't want you to call again, I said, and without waiting for a response, I ended the call, my heart racing. Dad looked over from across the kitchen table, his expression one of concern mixed with pride. You okay, Beth? Yeah, Dad, I think I will be. It's just hard, you know? I sighed, feeling the weight of years lift slightly with each spoken truth. You did what you needed to do. She has to understand her actions have consequences, he said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. In the following years, life found a new rhythm. Dad officially gained custody of Lucy, who thrived in her new school. I started college, working part-time at a local cafe to keep busy and support myself, a habit hardwired into me. College life was a mix of challenging and exhilarating. I poured myself into my studies, determined to make the most of the opportunity Dad had given me. Graduation day was a blur of joy and tears, with Dad and Sandra cheering the loudest. I had done it, graduated with honors and a job offer in hand. I moved into a small but cozy apartment, enjoying the independence I had fought so hard to gain. Lucy was now in college too, following her passion for graphic design. We were both grateful, so incredibly grateful, for the new life Dad and Sandra had helped us build. 2 years flew by since I'd graduated from college. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I had a good job that challenged me, and Lucy had just tossed her own graduation cap into the air. Then, one afternoon as I was sorting through emails at work, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity overcame caution, and I answered. Elizabeth, it's me, came the all-too-familiar voice, frayed with desperation. Mom? My heart sank, a mix of old wounds and wary concern bubbling up. I need your help. I've lost the house, and I owe the bank more than I can ever pay back. I'm on the streets, Elizabeth. You have to help me, she pleaded, her voice cracking. The news hit hard, but years of distance had given me perspective. Mom, I can't send you money. But I can help you get treatment for your gambling. There's a place not far from here that. Her response was a string of obscenities, each word sharper than the last. You ungrateful trash. You think you're better than me now, huh? Too high and mighty to help your own mother? Mom, please try to understand. I'm offering real help. Gambling has destroyed enough, don't let it destroy you completely. I pleaded, hoping for a sliver of reason. Save it. I don't need your charity or your lectures. She spat out, and then added, You'll regret this, Elizabeth. I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands. I hope someday you'll see this was for the best. Take care, Mom. Without waiting for another barrage of vitriol, I ended the call and blocked the number. My heart pounded painfully against my ribs, not out of fear, but out of finality. Back home, I slumped on the couch, feeling drained. Lucy came over, holding 2 mugs of tea, having heard the tail end of the conversation. She called you again? Lucy asked, handing me a mug. Her brow furrowed in concern. Yeah. It was bad, Luce. She's lost her house, is in debt, and still, all she wanted was money to gamble away. I explained, the weight of the call settling around us. Lucy sat down beside me, her presence comforting. You did the right thing, Beth. We can't drown with her. Lucy said softly, her voice steady and sure. Her words echoed in my mind. We can't drown with her. It was harsh, but true. I looked at my sister, her maturity and understanding a stark contrast to the chaos our mother brought into our lives. "You're right, Lucy. It's time to really let go and move forward," I affirmed, feeling a resolve strengthen within me. Lucy and I spent that weekend planning a trip together, something to celebrate her graduation and reinforce the new chapter we were both stepping into. As we mapped out our journey, I felt a sense of excitement for the future, a future I was ready to embrace fully. In life, we all make choices. Some lead us into the light, others into shadows. But each step, each decision, teaches us something valuable. For me, it was learning that sometimes, loving someone means letting them face their own battles, and that saving myself was not an act of betrayal, but an act of courage.